Good morning, grade 7 Saint Cecilia. How are you guys doing today? Good. Great. Better. Well, I feel so glad that you guys are doing good today. Are you guys ready to learn something new today? Yes? Well, that's good. But before we start our discussion for today, may I ask who could volunteer to lead for the prayer? Anyone? Just raise your hand. Anyone who can volunteer to lead for the prayer? Oh, yes, Mr. Elijah. Thank you. Please be in front. In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Amen. Thank you, Mr. Elijah, for leading our prayer today. So, class, good morning. But, oops. Before we take our seats, let us first try to greet one another in a different way using a different language. Ready? Okay. Ohayo gozaimasu. It is Ohayo gozaimasu. Ohayo gozaimasu. Again. Ohayo gozaimasu. Okay, let's try this one. I'll greet first and you'll greet me back. Ohayo gozaimasu. Well, very good. That's good. Perfect. Before we start with our discussion today, let me ask some of the questions about yesterday's topic. Let's do some recap. Let us do the reviewing. Yesterday, we discussed a very fascinating topic. What topic was that? Yes, we discussed poetry yesterday. We discussed its elements, its characteristics, its significance, and also we tried to go back or to take the historical path that the poetry had taken. So, class, can you tell me what poetry is? Anyone? I know that you could answer it, or most of you could answer it, because you were able to participate in my class yesterday very well. So, what is poetry? Okay. Yes. Very good. Excellent. Poetry is a form of literature that makes use of figurative language. And it is what? Can you add up? Yes. It is imaginative and it is creative. What else? Yes. Oh, very good. Yes. It is driven by emotions, or poet or poetess writes or composes poetry with burning emotions. We also even discussed the difference between a poetry and a poem. So what is a poetry and what is a poem, and what is the difference between the two terminologies? Anyone? Yes, Mr. Sahara. Hmm? Yes, great. You were able to listen to my discussion yesterday because you were able to answer it correctly. The difference between poetry and a poem: poetry is the process of writing. It's the act of writing. It's the process of composing a literary piece, while poem is the product of poetry. It's the final piece of poetry. Okay, guys, I am so happy that you were able to listen to my discussion, because today you are able to respond to my questions satisfactorily. Are you guys ready to learn something new today? Today's topic is really connected or related to the discussion we had yesterday, poetry. Are you guys ready? Oh yes, all of you are so ready. I can see in your faces that all of you are so excited to learn a new lesson today. But before we start with our discussion for today, let us first have a short activity. May I ask everyone to get a piece of paper and a pen? Let us listen to the music. And while you are listening to the music, write down the words, phrases, or any thoughts that you feel or that cross your mind while you are listening to that music. Understood? Am I clear? Yes. Okay. Get a piece of paper and a pen. We'll listen to this music. Ready? Okay. Are you guys ready? Are the pieces of paper and pens on the table already? Yes, they are. So let's start listening. Shh. Quiet. It's better if you will close your eyes so you can be able to feel the music. Okay, everyone, close your eyes. Feel the music. What the music is all about? What do you hear? In what place? What can you see? What can you visualize? What kind of place is this? What sound is that? What's happening in that place? Feel it. Visualize it. Try to imagine it. And let your thoughts, imaginations guide your hands. Silence. Feel it. Listen to it. Let your minds wander. Let your minds enter different doors of your imaginations. Stop. Okay. Papers up. And pass your papers in front. Good? Good? Okay. So, what is that music? Or what was that music? What that music was about? The music was all about the sounds of the nature. What did you hear? You heard the sounds of trees, of birds, of water, of the dancing winds or breeze. What else? You heard the falls. It was the sound of nature. How were you able to write down all of those words? You were able to write down all of those words because you listened to the music well. Because you focused on it. Because you ignored all of those disturbances in this environment and you let your focus be on that music, be on that nature. And through that, or by that, you were able to feel it, to feel the nature. Guys, do you know that people, or some people in some countries, they were so attached to the nature. They had this very or a deep affection or very intimate connection with the nature. They loved the nature unconditionally and they would take care of nature continuously and they would pass this genuine affection to that generation. Do you also know that there are some people who express their adoration to the nature or narrate their brief moments with nature in a poetic way, in a creative way, using words? For today, we will be discussing a genre of poetry that is very unique, fascinating, deep, magnificent, beautiful, and rich. So, guys, through looking at these things or figures that I pasted on manila paper, can you guess in what or to what country does it belong? In what country does it belong? Or from where it comes? And what is the name of such genre? Or what is the name of the poetry? Of that genre of poetry? This is a flag, right? I know that we are Asians. And I know that there are people in my class or persons in my class that are familiar with this flag. What flag is this? To what country does it belong? Whose flag is this? Anyone? Okay, I know that all of you are familiar with this. I know that all of you know what flag is this. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Yes, it is the flag of Japan. And what is this? What kind of mountain is that? Or what is the name of that mountain? I know that you're familiar with that because some of you are reading manga comics. And some of you also are watching animes. And I know that figure has been appearing on anime series or maybe on anime or manga comics. So, what's the name of this mountain that is being found in Japan? It's Mount Fuji. Yes, very good, Mount Fuji. So today, I'll ask you a question. What is the poetry, genre of poetry that comes originally or that is originated in Japan? What is it? Are you guys ready to know? Today we'll discuss everything about not haiku, it's haiku. We'll discuss haiku. So, what is a haiku? Haiku is traditionally a Japanese poem consisting of 3 short lines that do not rhyme. So Japanese poetry, haiku is a genre of Japanese poetry. It has been originated in Japan. Unlike other poetry or poems that is long or something that has a writing pattern or rhymes, haiku is very short with 3 short lines only and it does not rhyme. Unique, right? Because most of the poems that we have been reading are long and they have rhyming pattern. So it means that haiku is very unique because it only has 3 short lines and it does not rhyme. Okay? From what country does haiku belong or does haiku come? Japan. It is what? Short and yes, it doesn't have a rhyme. Next is the origins of haiku can be traced back as far as the 9th century. So haiku has been existing since 9th century. What is really the history of haiku? How did it start? Who started it? Who created it? How did it appear? Well, we can be able to answer those questions if we will try to understand these terminologies. Do you know, class, that the word haiku is derived from the word huku? So, what is huku? Do you class have any idea about the word huku? Huku, huku, huku. No, I'm just kidding. Just a gag. That's a gag. It is a huku. Just kidding, class. Just kidding. Let's get down to business. Okay. Huku is the starting verse of the poem Renga. Renga is a Japanese poem, also a genre of Japanese poetry that consists of 100 stanzas. And the Renga has a starting verse, and that verse consists of 3 lines. And that starting verse is called huku. And do you also know that the Renga poem or poetry is not being written by a single writer or by a single poet or poetess? The alternating sections of Renga are being written or supplied by multiple poets. Do you know that if we're gonna go back to the ancient Japanese, if we're gonna rate the ancient Japan literary history up, or if we're gonna try to know the history of Japan's literature, Renga is a poetry that was written during a session. There was a session called a Renga session, and that session was being attended by multiple poets. And that huku, the starting verse, would be written by an expert, by a skilled poet who was commissioned to travel around to see the nature, to feel the nature, to see the environment, to experience magnificent things. As a consequence, he could compose a better start, or he could compose an excellent or a better huku or starting verse that would totally attract the attention of readers. And the alternating sections would be written by multiple poets. So huku is a very special part of Renga. But in 17th century, a great poet of the Edo period named Matsuo Basho detached the huku from Renga, making it an independent poem or genre of poetry. Who took the huku away from Renga? Yes, Matsubasho. He took the huku from Renga and he made it an independent poetry or independent poem, making a new genre of poetry. So that's it. That's how the word haiku started. It was derived from huku. And also, after the detachment of huku from Renga, there were a lot of poets or poet writers who also started writing hukus. They followed Matsuo Basho, and they really found such new genre of poetry unique, magnificent, simple, yet intense. And also, how did it become? It was huku. It was being detached by Matsuo Basho as huku. But how did it become haiku? A poet named Masao Kashiki. Masao Kashiki is also a poet, was also a poet, and he was also a literary critic. Later on, he renamed the huku into haiku. Who was that again? Who renamed the huku to haiku? Yes, Masaoka Shiki. So that is the etymology or the history behind the haiku. It was detached from Renga. It became an independent poem because of Matsuo Basho, who was a teacher and a wanderer, and later on it was renamed into haiku by Masaoka Shiki, who was a literary critic. Impressive, right? So creative. Matsuo Basho, through that detachment, Matsuo Basho was able to create or to come up with a new genre of poetry. Next is haiku. Often focus. Okay, before I proceed with the third paragraph, with the third sentence, do you have any questions? Are the history and the first characteristic of haiku clear? Do you have any questions? Do you have any clarifications? Are you confused? Is everything clear? Okay. Thank you. That's good. So, let's proceed. Often focusing on images from nature. From what? Yes, from nature. Haiku emphasizes simplicity, intensity, directness of expression. So we are already aware that haiku is only composed of 3 short lines. So the words being used are very simple. The terminologies that compose or that constitute a haiku are just simple. They are direct to the point. The moment you read a haiku, you can say, oh, I know that. I know the general meaning of that poem because the words being used are so simple. Yes, because it's a 3 short lines poem, so it must be expressed in a very simple way. Yes, it must be simple, but it is intense. There is an intensity. Japanese writers were so creative. They are so deep. They are so intense whenever they are expressing themselves in a very poetic way. Their words must be simple, but the emotions behind those words or the emotions that drive them to write haikus are of intensity. Something that can make you feel, oh, that poem is so good. Oh, I like that poem. Oh, I like that emotion. That's it. Simple words, yet intense because of emotions, thoughts that they want to convey or they want to impart. Next is the directness. Unlike other poems or poetries that are using deep symbols